isolation, coercion and threats, blaming, intimidation, fear. This pattern of behaviors associated with domestic violence was not our socio-cultural norm. These controlling behaviors have infiltrated and poisoned our community, in part due to historical trauma, boarding schools, as well as the imposed Western European male-dominated way of thinking.
Waganaxiko dawa, Nishnabe Kwayan daw, Tachinga Bang Menacing and Dojuba. Pelston and Doda, Sheshku Dodam, Nishiki Kwendis Nakas. My name is Delita Gasco Smith, and I am the Domestic Violence Health Educator for the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians Project Connect program. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the direct correlation between historical trauma and domestic violence in our communities. Pre-European contact, there was one thing: domestic violence and sexual assault were not an acceptable behavior in our communities, and it was only when the Europeans came here that that was introduced in our communities as an acceptable behavior. The Europeans, when they came here, were actually appalled to think that the women in the communities had a say in what happened, in how the government was run here. And from the first time that they set foot here, one of their goals was to completely destroy that opinion that the women actually had a role in saying what happened. So that's how domestic violence was introduced in our communities, and they tried many different ways. Obviously, the acceptable behavior being that women subservient to men, that their roles were to stay at home, take care of the house, and just speak when spoken to. And with us coming from a matriarchal society, that was unacceptable to us. And our men, our warriors, what they consider to be a warrior and what we consider to be a warrior in our communities are two different things. For us, those warriors are those men who take care of their homes, their families, their communities, and provide for them. And for them, it was just, if a warrior was a true warrior, all he did was conquer and destroy. And so that's how that behavior was introduced into our communities here. One way that they took away our complete way of life was to they brought their Jesuits. The Jesuits were the first to come in here and introduce their religion to us, which everybody knows that religion is based on it's a patriarchal thing. It's a male-dominated role, and everybody is subservient to them. But after those Jesuits came in here is when our families were completely destroyed. Children were taken away. They were put in boarding schools. And when we talk about historical trauma for our people, that was when all of that began. They just completely set out to introduce us to a way of life that was completely unnatural to us. They took away all those prayers. They took away our language. They cut our hair. All those things that have such spiritual meaning to us were completely taken away from us, and we were just completely immersed into their culture, into their world, trying to assimilate us into the way of life that they thought that we should be living. And that those boarding schools, we all know the history of those boarding schools. They weren't nice places. And I said, you either learned or literally had things beat into your head there. And I said, and that was where a lot of the violent behavior, when we talk about that learned behavior for our people, a lot of our people, men and women, learned that as an acceptable behavior, a way of teaching somebody something. So when you want to dominate and control, that's what you do, is you strike out violently. And that was how a lot of our, like I said, our whole base of who we are as people was destroyed through that. And so now we're moving back towards when we talk about historical trauma and recovery from that and domestic violence. A lot of that, with that violent behavior being ingrained in people's minds, that it's okay, it's an acceptable behavior to do that. We're trying to restore balance in our community by reestablishing the fact that was not a role, that was not acceptable behavior to us. When we had instances of that in our community, pre-European contact, they were dealt with swiftly and they were dealt with severely. It wasn't tolerated. And that's why our communities were in balance, because everybody loved and respected and took care of each other during that time. And so now we're at a point in our community where we're recognizing that for what it is, and we're trying to move forward and reestablish that balance in our community by reestablishing those cultural beliefs and that cultural base that we have. Where we go from here, I guess, is what we need to address too. Part of what we need to address is the fact that now we recognize that domestic violence for what it is. During those boarding school years, many of our men were physically, sexually abused and dominated, completely controlled. So when they come out from the boarding schools, and they never returned home after that either. A lot of us were just sent into foster care systems, which actually fed onto that historical trauma piece in our people. They were never allowed to return home to their own families. And so the only way of life that they know now is that domination and control. They don't know that our warriors were actually our protectors. They were the ones that took care of our families, took care of our communities. And now that we recognize that for what it is, and we want to move forward and heal as a community, we can openly talk about that and address it. And that piece that's missing from our community that was caused this whole domestic violence issue, and how men feel the need to completely dominate and control their households instead of work as a cohesive unit, which is what our warriors did in the beginning, before European contact and before all of this was introduced to us as an acceptable behavior. So we need to discuss this, to talk about it openly, and if we're going to heal as a community and move forward and restore that balance in our community, this is a good place for us to start, to recognizing this for what it is and openly discussing and letting everybody know it's okay to talk about it, and that in order to heal, that's what we're going to have to do, be able to move forward and heal not just our families but our community as well.
Project Connect, a coordinated public health initiative to prevent violence against women, is supported by the Office of Women's Health and funded through the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2005. The Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians was selected as a grantee and began its work on domestic violence issues within the community in January of 2013. Since then, the tribe has been able to provide services for over 75 women, 3 men, and approximately 50 children. The National Domestic Violence Hotline website states that domestic abuse is a repetitive pattern of behaviors to maintain power and control over an intimate partner. These behaviors that physically harm, arouse fear, prevent a partner from doing what they wish, or force them to behave in ways they do not want. Abuse includes the use of physical and sexual violence, threats, intimidation, emotional abuse, and economic deprivation. Domestic violence may even result in death. Victims may stay out of feeling trapped, powerless and controlled, fear, shame, or to protect their children. Victims may develop all sorts of physical, mental, and emotional symptoms similar to post-traumatic stress disorder. Domestic violence does exist in our community and not only affects the woman or person being abused, but has negative effects on all of us.
Ani, my name is Tammy Oakley Shananaquat Indishnakas, Mayingan and Dodam, Badaske, and Dojaba. I am the survivor of domestic violence. We've been asked to tell our story, and my story, as many of us that are Odawa or Native American, began when we were very young. And I had the unfortunate opportunity to be removed from my family and placed into foster care and then into an adoptive family. I was removed from that adoptive family at age 15 for physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, and continued to go on through the foster care system. And then at a young age, I married when I was 20, my first marriage. My husband left and went into the service and didn't return, found greener pastures. And then I had a second marriage, and that lasted about 6 months. It actually was a 8-year relationship, but it included a lot of drinking, and you know, that particular relationship was very abusive also. I had made a choice to leave. I had gotten a divorce and had asked my husband to move out, and he did for about 3 months, and then he moved back in to help me with the children. And then for additional 7 years, he lived in my home. He would come and go as he pleased. He never paid a bill. He never paid child support. He, again, and people were once again asking me, why is he there? Why, you know, he made all these promises, again, that he'd stop drinking, he'd be a good father, he'd be a good husband. When, once again, the behaviors continued and he continued to verbally and emotionally abuse our children, I made a choice to leave the area altogether. Again, I decided that I needed to make the changes, and for the good of my children, for the good of my family, for my survival. And I moved up to Petoskey and got a job with the Odawa government building. I met some wonderful, supportive people, including my family members, and many of us are all family, is what I've come to find out. But they had some domestic violence programs that had just begun up here, and through utilizing those particular services, the counseling, especially important, and to realize that, you know, we're broken, but we're not the problem, and that, you know, that abuse, especially years of abuse, tend to make you feel like you're the failure, or you didn't do something right, when in fact you are surviving day after day, year after year, and you've done many things right. So I continued to go to counseling, and what I have found out even 4 years later now, that my children have said that it would have been better had I left when they were younger, that they were living through all this, and even though I thought I was protecting them, that they've learned things that now they, you know, they're going to counseling themselves to understand that what they were living was not normal part of living. And now I'm doing things that I have never done. I mean, I was forbidden to go to my church. I'm now going to my church and worshiping how I want to. I have an opinion that I can make and say and talk to people, and I don't have to look at the floor or be afraid to make something for dinner, because it's just a life that now I'm trying to show my children, my girls and my boys, that that there is a life beyond abuse and beyond what they've lived and what I've lived.
What's going on? Lisa? Lisa? Party? What's going on?
Hey, Mommy.
How's he hurting her?
He made his Mommy.
Okay, don't cry. We're going to send the police.
Okay.
Okay, now where's your mother at right now?
She's in the room fighting with us. Okay, could you just send the police?
Yeah, they're on their way, but I'm going to keep you on the line until they get there, okay? Is your front door open?
Oh, no.
Okay, you go unlock it and come back to the phone so the officers can get in?
This way, please.
Okay. What sister that he knocked out?
My little sister.
Your
Oh my God!
What's the matter?
Something happened! Just listen to me! Wait, I want to go see what happened, please!
Okay, the police are on their way, okay? Hello? Lisa? The police are on their way, okay?
Mama, the police are coming! My stepdaddy's got the baby now!
Yes, Lisa, where is he at now?
What?
Lisa, where? Hello?
Now that we know the devastating effects of domestic violence on an individual citizen or member of the community, and how to identify an aggressive person who exhibits these behaviors, we need to know where there is help and resources to restore our community members to a life that is safe and free from fear. Keely Fry, LTBB victim advocate, explains some of the services offered.
My name's Keely. I'm the victim advocate here at LTBB, and I work with domestic violence survivors and sexual assault survivors. Even if it was in the past or if there's something going on now, I can help you with some problem solving and let you know all the services we provide. So some of the things we can provide is just letting me know what the situation is that's going on with you right now, how we can work towards safety, whether you choose to stay in that situation or leave. We do have financial assistance available if you're looking to relocate, to move. We can help with some transportation, whether it's gas cards, if you have emergency needs for toiletries, for baby goods, for food. Those are things that we can look into as well. And some other things that we offer, we have some clothing resources if you're in need of emergency clothing. We work with the Gold Mine Shop and the Women's Resource Center to help get some of those items when you need them quick, fast, and in a hurry. And if there's any court things that are coming up for you, we can accompany you to front of the court just to have somebody there as a support person. Sometimes it's not comfortable to have family there with you or not safe. So we can meet you at the courthouse or drive you there, walk in with you and sit with you. Make sure that there's a bailiff there. If you have a PPO that you want to file through tribal court or the county, we can help you set that up and just take you to the right places. And so this is my card, and I will write my fax number on here or cell phone number if you need that. And also we have a few papers that we go through with you. The first is just to make sure that we have your information, your address and phone number. If it's not safe to call you on your phone, if there's a phone number of a friend or relative that we can use or an address. And let us know if it's safe to contact you. If it's not, then we'll just wait to hear from you. We want there to be no question of your safety here. So the first thing we do is go through this intake checklist with you, and this just kind of breaks down what kind of things have been going on so we can look at safety concerns, whether or not you're feeling afraid in the place where you're living, if it's a family member or an intimate partner. Are there any threats to harm you or anyone else? Are there any restrictions that you have on your money, your time, your ability to have a job or have transportation? And if you're feeling isolated from spiritual or traditional practices, being able to see your family. The second thing we would give you is the Statement of Client Rights. It explains the rights that you have as a client coming for services and the responsibilities we both share as we work together to solve your problems or find solutions for what's going on at home. So you have the right to know how your information is going to be treated. When you come in and fill out this paperwork, and I take notes as we have phone calls and work together to find solutions for you, it's kept locked in this drawer here. Only myself and one other coworker have the key in case I'm not here. Stacy Edwagishik, who's our project coordinator, can access that information to be able to assist you. We also have case consult where if there's a situation going on that I don't know the best way to solve it or to how to find resources for you, I can ask the other social workers here in the office who are also bound by confidentiality. The other caveat to confidentiality The other issue is that I'm a mandated reporter as a social worker. That if you tell me that a child is in a situation where they're experiencing neglect or abuse, or if you're going to harm yourself or someone else, then I am obligated by law to report that. So I always let clients know that up front, so you can feel comfortable sharing with me whatever you want to share with me. So the client's rights and responsibilities, going back to that, is that you have a right to obtain services regardless of your age, of your orientation, or whether or not you're a tribal member, descendant, or non-native person who's in an intimate partner relationship with a tribal member, or if you have children who are tribal members. And that you will come to appointments that we set up. If you need to cancel, you'll let me know. And if there's any situations that we can't resolve together, if I'm not helping you in a way that you want to be helped and you need we need some assistance, then you have the right to go to a director or my coworker and find assistance there. So that's something that a client would sign when they come in, as well as myself. Then we have the consent for release of confidential information. Oftentimes when I'm working with a client, they may have a probation officer, a counselor, a friend, or even just having communication with housing. They give me permission of who I can share information with them about and what kind of information. So say you want help with housing, they give me permission to talk with Kate in housing just about housing issues, not about what happened last night or what's going to happen this weekend, only about the housing situation. So the client always gets to choose who has their information outside of this office. And I always set the release for the information ends about a month after we meet for the first time. So I'm always going back to the client to say, is it still okay that I talk with Kay about housing? Is it still okay that I'm speaking with your counselor about how we're working towards things, what kind of progress we're making? So we both sign that. If there's no one that you want your information shared with outside this office, then that doesn't get signed. And then the last form is our legal liability release. And that just explains that I am not a legal advocate. I will accompany you to court as a support person, but I do not hold any legal training or claim any legal expertise, only experience accompanying people to court.
Victim Support Services is located at 911 Spring Street in Petoskey, Michigan. LTBB's Domestic Violence and Victim Support Services is open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Call for help at 1-231-242-1628. Or, after hours, call the Women's Resource Center Crisis Hotline at 1-800-275-1995. One of the citizens who has benefited from the Victim Support Services is LTBB citizen Mary Gasco.
Ani, Mary Gasco Indigenous, Mayangan Sindodam, Odawa Ganakasing and Doda Bendaguas, Odawa Koy and Dao. Hi, my name is Mary Gasco and I am a survivor of domestic violence. Today I wanted to share a little bit with you about my experience with domestic violence and how much LTBB Victim Support Services was able to help me. For me, I think the biggest influence of the abuse was how much he tore down my self-esteem. He would constantly tell me that I wasn't good enough or I didn't deserve a better life. I'd never find anyone else other than him to love me or accept me. And that held me captive in that relationship for a long time. But there came a day that my daughter witnessed him kicking me. And she asked me if I was okay. She was like, "Mom, I saw that." And I looked in her eyes and I had such fear that she would one day grow up to be in the same situation that I was in and that she would think that was love. So I knew that night that I had to get out no matter what. And that was a point in my life where I knew that I needed to leave. I left him that night, but it took a few months for me to actually get a hold of services. I decided to move up to Emmett County, and my second week living in the area, I walked into Tribal Human Services and I said, I need help. The ladies there were extremely receptive and kind and proactive, and that day I was able to get an appointment with a victim's advocate. Over the next months, they helped me with rides to and from food pantries, they helped me get diapers for my son, they helped me filling out paperwork for housing needs, and I never once felt that they were going to break confidentiality. They were very professional and supportive. And the most important thing that they did for me was provide kind, understanding people that were there with me every step of the way, and they let me know that I wasn't alone, and that really enabled me to be successful up here. I firmly believe that without these services, I wouldn't be where I am today, and I can honestly tell you that today I'm thriving, not just surviving. I live free of the fear and anxiety that I lived in that abusive cycle, and I'm starting to believe that I deserve to be happy, and the same is possible for you. I know it feels hopeless and that you can't get yourself out of it, but you can, and I encourage you to ask for help and to seek the services offered by LTBB Victim Support Services.